Hi, it's Nicole, and today I'm finally getting around to doing the Invisible Cities tag. I'll be looking at this in terms of the books that I'd read up until the point that we announced the tag and not books that I've been reading through 2022. I would say I read a lot of good books for Invisible Cities last year, but I think my favorite might be Yu Hua's China in 10 Words. I found it really insightful. I loved his subtle humor, and the topic and style of that book was just really up my alley. I think something about learning about cultures around certain objects or themes, and then going through each of these themes such that it expands in a way that you might not necessarily assume that it would, just by looking at what the object is or what the topic, or in this case word, might be. It made me interested in reading more from Yu Hua, but I think another thing that tends to happen when I come across a book that I really like in that kind of way, specifically in nonfiction, it definitely kind of makes me want more nonfiction of that kind. And so if he has any more nonfiction, I think that would be what I would be probably more drawn to than fiction. But I have heard that in general he is just a really well-liked author, and so he's probably someone that I'll be looking at more of in future. As for authors I'd like to read more from, obviously Yu Hua is one of them, but other authors that I'd be really interested in reading more from include Bae Myung-hoon, Shion Miura, Cesar Aira, and Fouad Laroui. The books that I read from those authors were definitely among my favorites that I read in 2021, so it makes sense that I would want to read more from those authors. A non-book favorite, I would assume usually would be something food related, because, you know, that's me. But I actually didn't spend a lot of time on the cooking front last year, and that's definitely just because of laziness. And I think as well what I would have really liked being able to do, except for the fact that, you know, pandemic and all, would have been to go out to restaurants or something and patronize some of the places that were on theme for each of the months, but I didn't get to do that. So instead, I think my non-book favorite would be Sky Ladder, which is a documentary film about a Chinese artist. But the film itself made me really want to get back to museums and galleries and exhibitions and things like that. I really enjoyed the documentary, and I thought it was a good little peek into the arts industry in China and this particular artist's work. Countries you read for the first time, I think probably most of them. I don't think that I am particularly widely read, which is partly why, you know, the getting involved in this project in the first place. But just to list a few, I think possibly Morocco, as well as possibly Egypt, and I think Lebanon. A geographical area or country you want to explore more. Francophone Africa, and especially North Africa. I don't exactly know why, but that area is just really interesting to me. And as cliche as it might seem to look at the Asian popular kids, Japan, South Korea, and China are definitely ones that I really enjoy looking at. For women in translation, recommendations, not just books that I've read by women in translation, but ones that I would actually recommend. I loved Shion Miura's The Great Passage. I thought it was really heartfelt and earnest, and I loved the passion in the work that they were doing. And I'm also very interested in linguistics. I did a course in linguistics in college, and at one point I actually considered going into languages instead of in illustration. Not to mention that I was always the kid who would be like reading the dictionary just for fun. So this one was definitely up my alley, but even if that isn't you, like even if you're not crazy about linguistics in that kind of way, this one just feels like it has a lot of heart, and I think in general I find that even if you're not interested in something that other people are interested in, just looking at their passion and watching them on a journey towards some sort of big goal for them, for me that is a really engaging kind of thing to get into. So this is one I would definitely recommend. Also Cho Nam-Joo's Kim Jiyoung, born 1982, and I would recommend it for people who enjoyed Convenience Store Woman, The Vegetarian, Please Look After Mother, other books like that. And I would place it on that quirkiness scale closer to Please Look After Mother than Convenience Store Woman. I wouldn't say that it's like particularly quirky or anything like that, but just that it's looking at issues that women face in a restrictive society, and specifically within an Asian society, even though I would say it is more widely relatable for women in general. It obviously has those specificities in it. I also quite like the framing device, or I guess end framing device-ish, of the book, the perspective that it's essentially kind of taking. And even though I wouldn't say it was one of my favorites that I read last year, it was still, I think, quite a strong story, and I think it would be one that I can imagine being quite popular with a lot of people. And then I think I will have to mention Nawal el-Saadawi. When we read Woman at Point Zero, that was one of many really interesting group reading experiences that I had during the project, and it was because there were a lot of varying ideas about the book. I initially wasn't huge on it, I guess. I wasn't super crazy about it, but other people who really loved it, it was so good to be able to just interact with them and talk through the things that didn't work for me, and the things that did, and vice versa, the things that did or maybe didn't work for them, and how each of us was looking at these elements and why we thought that she might have been doing that. Then looking behind the scenes at some of the interviews with Nawal el-Saadawi and seeing kind of her perspective approaching this, and looking at how she interacted as well with other readers. And there were points when she would kind of be like, oh, that's not what I intended, but I love that you have sort of inferred that in the reading. And so I felt like that was an experience, a group read experience that was really valuable to me, and I hope that anybody reading this book would also maybe try to pursue that kind of experience with this, where they're reading with other people and having that kind of discussion. I think this is a really good book for that. And I mean, probably Cho Nam-Joo's book would also be very good for like group discussion. I didn't do that with that book, but they have some similar themes about the treatment of women in societies. So yeah, that's what I would recommend. As for Invisible City's goals going forward, we're already quite a ways into this year now, so I've already kind of thought about this and started, hopefully, I think, embarking on what my new goals are for this year with the project personally. And I've already mentioned that doing some of those other non-reading extracurriculars is of interest to me. Movies is probably the easiest for me to do. Getting involved more with the food of these different cultures is something that I would really love to do. I don't think I think I'm probably a little bit too busy/lazy to actually do a lot of the cooking and seeking out new recipes in time for things. If I'm being really realistic, though, I feel like that would also be probably the most fun to do, just like tasting all of these different cultures, if you will. But I think I could also probably do better with like the music aspect, because that would be quite easy to do, just like listening to music from these different countries, and I think that would be a really good way to find new music. The only thing is that for me, just sitting and listening to music is not something that I do often. I mean, I could just kind of put some music on and work to that, I guess, but in general I tend to prefer sitting and listening to an audiobook or podcast or something like that. So just by process of elimination, I would say that the extracurricular that I'm most likely to get more into in the project as things go on is going to be movies, maybe possibly music, I don't know, but definitely movies is going to be something that I do more of going forward on the side of my reading. So that is a wrap for the tag. It didn't actually take as long as I thought it might, so maybe I should have done this ages ago, but hey ho, here we go. Better late than never, as I always say. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Bye.